What is up, everyone? Let's get right into it. We're talking about Brazil. We're on a FIFA break this week, so we're going international. We're going to take a look at the Brazilian players that got called up to the September camp. This is not the final 26-man Brazil squad for Qatar. Some players are a lock for sure, but there could still be changes, and we got to talk about potential snubs. Are there any players that deserve to be there but aren't? But Fern, let's talk about this group of players as a whole. Is this a golden generation? And by that, I mean a team that should dominate Copa America and the World Cup qualifying and should be expected to win at least one World Cup out of the next 3 or 4.
It does look like this is the best team that Brazil has had in quite a while. Very strong team, but what I will say is that they have a lot of veterans on there. So they're pretty old. So who knows if we'll see these players back for Copa America or the next World Cup. And also, I think that there are a few players that should be there that aren't, and also a few players that shouldn't be that are.
I think this is a golden generation, and the nation of Brazil is crying out for another World Cup. It's been 20 years. The last time that they won the World Cup was in 2002, where they beat Germany in the final. And I'm looking at that generation of players. Okay, they had Dida as the goalie, Cafu, Lucio, Roberto Carlos, Ronaldinho, Kaká, Ronaldo, Rivaldo. This is like, that is the last, I would say, golden generation of Brazilian players. And this team right now in 2022, I think has the perfect mix of experienced players and new up-and-coming players that are going to be the future of Brazil. So I feel like Brazil is under a lot of pressure, and this might be their best chance. I mean, they'll be great, I think, for the next 10 years, but this might be their best squad that they're going to have, taking advantage of the experienced players like Thiago Silva, for example. And also, Neymar is in his prime right now. I think this is Neymar's last opportunity to have a great World Cup.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. But, you know, you mentioned the previous generation of Brazilian players, and that's kind of what putting these players up against. And I don't know, yes, there are some great players, future legends on this team, but I don't know if you could really, compare this squad with that one. I think that previous generation was better. I think they were better by a lot. And part of the reason is because just every single position was filled with someone that we consider a legend today. I don't know if you can really say that about this squad, especially, they have youth there. So there's a lot of players that, maybe haven't proven themselves yet, that maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I do think that when it comes to that generation of players, I think it's much stronger than the one that is currently there today. And I think that there are some players on this squad that maybe don't deserve a spot.
But I think also the game has changed since then. So I think this group of players is kind of suited to the way that the game has evolved now. It seems like a lot of teams now are much more direct. It's much more about pace, athleticism, things like that. And this team, this Brazil squad has that in abundance, with players like Vini, Rafinha, Rodrigo. And then Neymar, I think, is ultimately going to have the pressure to be the superstar, the guy who puts the weight on his back, Pelé style. The last 4 World Cups, so 2006, Brazil went out to France in the quarterfinals. 2010, also in the quarterfinals, they lost to Netherlands. In 2014, they had the 7-1 to Germany in Brazil in the semifinal. Yeah. That was devastating for Brazil. And in 2018, they also lost again in the quarterfinals to Belgium. So it's a team that has it hasn't lived up to its historic nature, and Europe has dominated. And I think there are future legends here in this team. Like Vinny, to me, as long as he remains healthy, will be a legend. Neymar is already a legend. He's lacking the World Cup. That's what he needs. So I think this is it. Not this is it, but this team is under a lot of pressure to win along with France.
Yeah, and I mean, they are heavy favorites to win the World Cup. And I like you said, I see why. I do think they have a lot of great players, but I don't see them as strong as the last World Cup win that Brazil had.
Okay, let's go into the squads then. What are some of the selections that you don't like?
Okay, so first, Danilo. I don't think he should be on the squad. Um, could these aren't players that I'm just going to give you a replacement right now. But I don't know if he's quite there yet. And again, I know that some of these players are going to be subs, but so there's him.
I think Danilo is the starting right back, honestly. If there was somebody threatening for that right back position, it would have been Emerson. And he's not on this 26-man roster.
Yeah.
And also through World Cup qualifying and through the Copa America, Tite relied heavily on Danilo. Danilo was almost a locked-in starter.
But that kind of goes to my point. And I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with me, but I don't know. Even like before all that stuff, I don't know. For me, he's personally not a super convincing player in terms of that's your starter. Like in the best 11 Brazilian players in the world, I don't think he's there. But that's my opinion. I'm sure many people will disagree with me. Obviously you do, but
the other options is, like I said, Emerson and like Dani Alves, bringing Dani Alves back out of retirement. I mean, he's playing for Pumas,
right? But I think that if you're trying to, like you said, if you're trying to create a golden generation and build sort of towards the future, I think there's something to be said about giving maybe a younger player that chance to go in there and prove himself and at the very least compete. But if he's not even on the, if they're not even on the squad, like you're saying, Emerson, if he's not even on the squad, then he's not even given the chance to compete for that position. And who knows, maybe he'd beat him out.
I think Emerson will end up making the final cut. I just have a feeling for that. But I kind of get your point. When you're talking about golden generations, you can't really compare Danilo to somebody like Cafu, for example.
Exactly.
Like
exactly.
Yeah, I get you.
You can't really compare. I think the only player that you could really, in my opinion, put kind of in the same caliber is of, like, for example, the back line that Brazil had is Thiago Silva. He's a Brazil legend, in my opinion. I think that he is he's probably like the oldest player there, but he deserves to still be on that squad. I don't think that there's really been any years where he has failed to impress. He keeps getting contracts wherever he goes, even though he moves around, but he's always going to strong teams, playing well, being a leader. And I don't see anyone else in this back line that would really do that for Brazil other than Thiago Silva. I guess you could argue Marquinhos, maybe, but I don't know if I would put him in the same caliber as that back line that the previous generation of Brazilian players had.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I think Thiago Silva is a little bit too old, and he might be lacking for a little bit of pace at the World Cup. Teams are going to be fast and aggressive, but he has amazing experience, obviously, and he's a leader on the team. I don't think there's someone that would be able to command the back line in the same way that Thiago Silva would. And I think Marquinhos will probably be the starting partner with Thiago Silva, which I would protest against that, but I think that's how it's going to go. That would be the starting center back pairing. And then you'll have good options like Militao to come off the bench, or in a pinch, you can put him in and do a solid job. The wingers are interesting, like we've been talking about. I think Danilo is a lock on the right. And then moving to the left side, I think it will probably be Alex Sandro.
Yeah. I think it'll be Sandro as well.
And, I tend to agree with you that there's good, solid players, but they pale in comparison to Roberto Carlos and Cafu, for example.
Right.
That being said, though, I think the defense, I don't know if there will be tasked with flying forward in the same way. I kind of feel like Brazil's best strategy is to be good defensively and kind of just allow this, 4 or 5 star attacking players to do their thing on the attack. But of the players available, I think for me, the only snub on the back line is Emerson. I think Emerson should have been in this squad. That doesn't mean he won't be at the World Cup. So let's move up to the midfielders. We got Bruno Guimaraes, who's having a great season so far with Newcastle, Casemiro from Manchester United, Everton Ribeiro from Flamengo, Fabinho from Liverpool, Fred from Manchester United, and Lucas Paquetá from West Ham. What are your thoughts on those midfielders?
I cannot believe that Fred made this squad.
Fred plays better for Brazil than for Manchester.
Yeah, but he's still Fred. Like, he's like, I don't know why he's there. I think there's a lot of
I think
better
he's
players.
more box to box and very like physical work rate player on Brazil.
Sure, and I guess if you're looking at this squad, there is a lack of defensive midfielders in this squad. You do have Casemiro in there, who in
Fabinho
my
too.
Fabinho as well, but that's kind of it. I think that I mean Fred. I don't.
I think Fred gets a lot of hate. He usually plays well for Brazil, and I think having higher quality players around him makes him better. But I think Tite has been going a lot with the 4-2-3-1. So I think it will be probably, in my opinion, will be maybe Casemiro or Fred and Fabinho. I think Fabinho is probably the locked-in starter for
Yeah,
that holding mid, and then either Casemiro or Fred would line up right beside him, and they would be
yeah.
just plugging gaps. And then one more player on this midfield that I wanted to give a shout out to. I don't know much about him, but Tite loves this dude. Lucas Paquetá seems to start locked in for Brazil. He's
He
almost
does.
always a starter. And then I think the most people are talking about the front line. There's attackers
Yeah,
galore on Brazil. So
yeah.
we got Anthony from Manchester United, Roberto Firmino from Liverpool, Mateus Cunha from Atleti, Neymar from PSG, Pedro from Flamengo, Rafinha from Barcelona, Richarlison from Tottenham, and then Vinny and Rodrigo from Real Madrid. Notably, for me, the biggest snub is no
Yep.
Gabriel Jesus.
Yep. And he
Started
started
this.
because he's had a great start to his season. 4 goals, 3 assists in 7 Premier League games. So creating as many goals as games he's played. I don't understand him not being there. I think that for the World Cup, he should be there.
I
He
think he
will be
will.
there.
He will.
He will be there. But I don't understand why he's not there right now.
I feel like his direct competition in this squad that they called up is like Cunha, because Cunha is another striker. He does the high work rate in terms of pressing and playing, that type of high velocity pace. But Jesus can do that as well. And not only that, he's way more of a goal scorer and way more skillful than Cunha. So for me, in the final World Cup squad, I would expect to see Cunha drop and Jesus step in there. He's a more all-around player, more of a threat on goal, just a better and a more like, I think the Brazilian fans relate with Jesus a lot because he's he's a dancer. He does all these Brazilian things that is very like true to the Brazilian team.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll be very honest. I'm surprised that Gabriel Jesus was snubbed in favor of Roberto Firmino. I think
I could do without him too.
yeah, so I think that Firmino is a player that he's very he he's very kind of streaky in his career. He's not very consistent in terms of the positions he's put in and what he delivers based on what that position demands. He had a great few years at Liverpool, but then we saw for a season or two he kind of struggled to even get on the field. They brought in a lot of attackers. He's starting now a little more, but I don't know. He just seems to not really have that bite, that like hunger for the ball. And I know that, on a team like Liverpool, he's more of a facilitator for players like Salah. It used to be Mane, now it's Luis Diaz. But yeah, I don't really see him as a convincing striker in terms of someone who's going to go out there and get you the goals.
I think
So
especially too with someone like Neymar in the squad, the need for
yeah,
a Firmino type player, it kind of goes away because on Liverpool, how you were mentioning, Salah and Mane are just direct. They just play extremely direct down the wings, and Firmino can play that little false nine link up position in the middle. But with Neymar being there as the 10 for Brazil, I don't really see where Firmino fits. Like you could push him out wide, but he's also not an
but he's not
extremely
really a winger.
yeah, he's not super fast or anything like that. So yeah, I
Yeah,
don't see exactly where
yeah, I don't
Firmino.
think there's anything really spectacular about Firmino. I think that you
He
could
does the
say
fundamentals well. He does the
right, but
fundamentals
what I'm
well.
saying is that you can't really say that about almost any of these forwards that are on the team. Neymar, obviously. Anthony, extremely skillful. Just got to United, already scored a goal in his debut. Like he's a player that is willing to go at your neck. He's not afraid to go at anybody. He's very flashy. So I'm sure a lot of players will get annoyed. I'm sure we'll see him on the ground a lot. And then, you have Vinny, who is having a great year already. He, I would say took a large step forward last season in terms of, he's not shanking goals all the time anymore. But yeah, I don't see Firmino as a player that, can really do that. Richarlison, also a player who, obviously he's a great player, but also a player who's not necessarily super consistent in terms of the quality he brings. He just joined Tottenham, and he's doing well, but I think there's some stuff to be desired. But I would still prefer him over Firmino. Rafinha, another player who's not really scared to go at a defender. Rodrigo, he's really starting to come into form as a player, as a young player he's really starting to cement his position in that Real Madrid lineup. He's becoming more relied upon and more reliable. Now, actually, I have a question for you, because 2 world-class keepers are on this team. So who do you have in net?
I'll have Allison.
You have Allison? Interesting. Yeah. I have Ederson.
Nah, man. That big ass tattoo right there is not a good look for the national team. It's not a good look
for the national team. Nah. Yeah, I don't know. I think Ederson's better with his feet. So he's better at playing out the back. Not that Allison isn't good, but I think Ederson provides a bit more security. They're both great shot stoppers. But I am actually interested to see who Tite goes with. I'd pick Ederson. I guess you have Allison.
Yep, there you have it. So thank you guys for checking us out. We'll be back with more World Cup talk during this international break. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace.